Oh, cool! A werewolf superhero on TV! That is such a neat idea! I wonder if anyone's ever done that before. Alright, before we begin, yes, I know werewolf superheroes are a whole thing. You can start pressing backspace on your comments now. Anyway, I don't know if you've taken notice of this judging by my content, but when it comes to TV shows, I'm a bit of a cartoon guy. Oh sure, I'll watch an absolute boatload of movies of all kinds, but my preferences in terms of genre have always leaned more towards the fantastic. And if I'm supposed to be paying attention for a ton of episodes, odds are I'll be watching something animated rather than whatever the most popular TV drama is at the moment. And yeah, there's plenty of fantasy TV shows that I will watch, but I don't know, man. I just tend to fall out sooner or later. As a result, I missed a lot of stuff that people praise today, even live action stuff that is otherwise right up my alley. I've never seen any of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I only started watching X-Files in recent years, and I never got more than 3 seasons into Supernatural. I just kept going for the cartoons, man. That doesn't mean I didn't watch any live action shows growing up, but I always ended up watching the weirder shows that nobody else watched. Remember The Tribe? Cause I do. What about Genie from Down Under? Yeah, I watched a bit of that. I even remember watching a fair few episodes of Round the Twist, which was, cool. Yeah, that might be a story for another time. Awesome theme song, though. But it's Halloween, so if we're going to be talking about old TV shows that nobody remembers, it needs to be perfect for the spooky season. We need something that's fun and campy and has more monsters in it that you can shake a stick at. And I can think of no better candidate than the small screen's primary superhero werewolf. No, not that one! I am, of course, talking about Tommy Dawkins, the big wolf on campus. It's just a phase I'm going through. Aw, hell yeah! This show was my shit when I was a preteen. Now, in case you're unfamiliar, Big Wolf on Campus was a Canadian TV show that ran from 1999 to 2001, starring Brandon Quinn and Danny Smith. And if you don't recognize these two just by name, then I don't blame you. They do still get TV gigs now and then, but as far as I can tell, they're mostly known for this particular show. Danny Smith does provide the voice for Petey in the animated sitcom Forget About It, but that is like the one thing of his I've even heard of.
The only place I'm fit to work is in a science lab, or perhaps some sort of theoretical think tank.
Will my frothy friend deliver me from the bonds of mediocrity?
Brandon Quinn might seem familiar, however, with a minor early 2000s TV career in shows like Orange County and Charmed. But horror fans might also have seen him in the Creepshow episode The Last Tsubaraya fairly recently. Good to see my boy still getting work. But anyway, back to this show. Basically, Big Wolf on Campus is centered around Tommy, Pleasantville High School star quarterback who one day finds himself mauled by a werewolf. However, unlike most werewolves, Tommy remains a good guy. And so he teams up with his nerdy goth friend Merton, and later the kickboxing delinquent Laurie, to keep Pleasantville safe from any ghouls, ghosts, and goblins that may come to town. Now, I know I already played a small bit of it, but if we're gonna talk about this show, then we have to check out the theme song. I used to own this town. Now it's all turned upside down. I wish I could figure out. Do you think it's just a phase I'm going through? Man, this song has been stuck in my head for over 20 years and it still just makes for an awesome intro. It's short, it's catchy, it oozes of the early 2000s, and it even has a clever little phase I'm going through line, referencing both the phases of the moon and Tommy going through regular teenage problems. And all of this lines up really nicely with how lycanthropy is very often used as a puberty metaphor in fiction. It's just a perfect mood setter. Top-notch stuff. Now, just in case you're sitting there expecting me to tell you how this actually had a lot more going for it than just being yet another goofy episodic monster hunting show, well, you're out of luck. It follows a very simple formula. Some kind of supernatural baddie shows up in Pleasantville, Tommy and Merton find out about it, Merton uses his vast knowledge of movies and spooky shit to figure out how to solve the problem, and Tommy goes to kick monster ass. All while trying to hide his hairy little secret from his classmates, his family, and his crush, Stacy. Oh, Stacy, Stacy, Stacy. You have got to be the least interesting thing I've ever seen in a TV show. I'm sorry, technically there's nothing really wrong with this character, but good lord does she add nothing to the show. She just exists to be this Little Miss Perfect Tommy has to jump through hoops to avoid revealing his werewolf form to, and literally nothing else. She has no personality, no flaws, no agency. The closest she gets to having any character at all is that she keeps nagging at Tommy whenever he stands her up for a date, which honestly is kinda fair. And look, I know I'm not one to talk here, but man, Rachel Lefebvre just couldn't act for beans at the time. Although she did get a lot better at it and went on to, among other things, play one of the vampires in Twilight. Good for her. Thankfully, due to her leaving the show to attend college, she's replaced in season 2 by Laurie, played by Amy Castle, and holy crap is she an improvement. She's a tough, kickboxing, take-no-shit, expelled Catholic school delinquent who wastes no time joining the boys on their monster hunting adventures, forming a full-on power trio. Now, there are more characters than these, of course, but don't expect them to play much of a role after season 1. Despite being the mayor and local newscaster, Tommy's parents basically disappear entirely from the show after season 1, while his TV-addicted brother Dean gets to stick around for a while after that.
Yeah, tell me about it, Mom. I can't watch Power Rangers till the stupid State of the Union address is over.
And yeah, as you might have guessed, his thing is mostly just to make jokes about popular TV. Not that I disagree, I'd much rather watch Rita Repulsa destroy the world. At least she's entertaining while she does it.
Don't listen to him, Velma. You keep right on meddling, you little vixen.
Hoo boy! I can already hear him tweeting. There's also the school bullies Tim and Travis, or TNT as they call themselves, who mostly exist to make Merton's life miserable and fail terribly at fighting the Pleasantville werewolf as Tommy becomes known. Imagine Bulk and Skull from Power Rangers and add a little bit of the O'Doyles from Billy Madison and you get a pretty good idea what these guys are like. But much like Tommy's parents, they basically completely vanished by season 3. Also, there was this creepy hall monitor guy in season 1. Nobody remembers or cares about the creepy hall monitor guy from season 1. So really, it all comes down to our main monster fighting trio. Or, well, if we're being honest here, our main monster fighting duo. Yeah, I'm sorry, I love you, Laurie, but anyone who's actually seen this will say the same thing. This show is all about Tommy and Merton. With Tommy's werewolf strength and Merton's knowledge, the two make for a perfect classic brains and brawn duo, capable of taking down just about anything. And their chemistry together as characters is just straight up brilliant. Remember, this show aired in the late 90s, so this was back when almost all the protagonists of kids shows and cartoons were the nerds, the bullied kids, the outcasts, and all the jocks were usually jerks or outright villains. And then here comes Big Wolf on campus, where not only is the big dumb jock the main hero, but so is the nerdy freaky kid. And they actually do play around with this dynamic in some pretty fun ways. Tommy, for instance, being a popular and well-liked sports star at his school, admittedly doesn't really throw a second glance Merton's way until his werewolf troubles start. But it's made pretty clear very early on that it's not really out of malice. He's a perfectly nice guy who's simply a bit susceptible to the social structure at his school. And it doesn't go away right away either. He actually has to spend a couple episodes learning to be more attentive to those outside of his social group, and that being nice to people means more than just not being mean. A great example of this is the Carrie parody episode titled Scary Terry. Yeah, I'm sorry, Rick and Morty fans, but Big Wolf used that name first.
Aw, bitch.
In this one, we're introduced to class outcast Terry.
In every school, there's one kid who's an outcast. No, not Merton. I mean a serious outcast, like Terry Bagwell. If students were countries, she'd be Iraq.
Jesus Christ, Tommy, what the fuck? Terry ends up discovering Tommy's secret while he discovers that she has telekinetic abilities. Terry, who is desperate for some popularity, uses this to blackmail Tommy to take her to a dance, only to then get furious when she overhears him telling Stacy that he just kinda felt sorry for her, which then leads to this exchange once she's done with her little Carrie rampage.
I'm such a loser.
No, you're not. Everybody just thinks you are. What I mean is, who cares what people at this school think?
It's easy for you to say. You're popular. You don't know what it feels like to be a freak.
Excuse me. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm a werewolf.
You know, all I ever wanted was to go to a high school dance and feel like a normal kid for once.
You're not normal. You're better than that.
You wore my boutonniere.
Yeah, well, I'm your date, aren't I? In fact, I believe you still owe me a dance.
If that ain't sweet, I don't know what is. Although, to be honest, I'd probably freak out too if I went to a high school dance and the only music they played was a terrible ripoff of Another One Bites the Dust. Horrifying. There are a few episodes where Tommy is presented with an option to go back to how things were, during which he naturally always learns to pick his current life with Merton and Laurie. This know who your real friends are lesson is nothing new, of course, but it's kind of nice to see it from the perspective of a character who's already fairly popular for a change. But seriously, I have to bring some special attention to Danny Smith, because for a show like this, he's a perfect comedic actor. In a show that's as deliberately cartoony as this, Danny decides to play his bullied, nerdy, cowardly lion goth kid character like he's a living, breathing, live-action Looney Tune. Forget about just sitting in the corner with his glasses on and saying nerdy shit sometimes. Danny always cranks his body language up to 11, seamlessly switches between moods for great comedic effect, and is totally down for doing whatever ridiculous shit it takes to get a laugh out of a scene. He is just awesome.
Save it, Merton, you spiky little magpie.
Minx?
Meddler!
I'm out of M insults. Can we try N?
Merton, no! He also wrote the theme song as well as a couple other songs that show up here and there during the show, so talk about a multi-talented dude. And just to give him some credit for his acting chops, there is an episode where he briefly becomes an evil werewolf, and he manages to both be the same geeky Merton we already know and love, as well as a genuinely competent and entertaining villain. It's like watching a nerdy Wolverine. And of course, I can't talk about Merton without bringing up the great running gag that he brings to the show.
Yeah, it was exactly like Spike Jonze's critically acclaimed yet financially disappointing film, Being John Malkovich.
What happened?
Well, in my opinion, the quirky premise was, quote, too thinky for middle America to embrace. I mean, even the chimp had a flashback.
In the movie, Merton. What happened in the movie?
This is one of the things people remember best from this show. Often, Merton would compare the plot of the episode to a popular movie, only to then get smacked upside the head when he starts rambling about random trivia, instead of actually recapping the plot in order to find a way to solve the problem of the day.
He does this all the time.
This running gag is so synonymous with the show that if you had asked me before I sat down to rewatch it, I would have told you he did this once per episode, but no, he doesn't. It's more like an occasional spice, which only makes it better. His movie knowledge also stretches further than you'd think. Sure, he references stuff you'd fully expect from this type of show, like...
This is just like the 1973 film The Exorcist. This is just like the 1933 genre-defining classic The Mummy. Oh, this is exactly how it started for the carefree teen heroes in Wes Craven's Nightmare on Elm Street.
What happened?
But then sometimes he'll go hilariously obscure.
This is just like the 1989 film Return of the Swamp Thing. I took it from Kenneth Branagh's 1995 Frankenstein adaptation. Yeah, too obscure.
Or bring out references to fantasy dramas and political thrillers.
This is just like The Purple Rose of Cairo, Woody Allen's Oscar-nominated tale of longing and betrayal. This is just like the 1962 political thriller The Manchurian Candidate, starring a re-energized Frank Sinatra.
Oh god, this is what I sound like when I talk, isn't it?
Tommy, the Strangler is just like the spirit from Fallen.
Oh shit, I hadn't even heard of that one. And sometimes they do come up with some pretty fun variations of this gag. Tommy will still dope slap Merton even when he's hypnotized, for example.
What happened in the movie?
Right.
In an alternate reality where Tommy never got his powers, he's the one who does this gag.
It's just like what happened to Nicolas Cage when he went back to doing comedy in The Family Man.
What happened?
I didn't laugh once. I mean, guy needs to stick to doing action films like Con Air and The Rock. You know what I mean?
I find it absurd that you'd mistake my meaning, but I was talking about the movie. What happened in the movie?
And then there was the one time the whole episode was a Terminator parody and Merton couldn't do the gag because for once, Tommy and Laurie had already seen the movie. It's simple, but screw you, it's funny. And I gotta tell you, growing up in a town where having any interest outside of sports was like begging to get your shit kicked in, this scrawny goth nerd made me feel seen.
Nerds have labs. I have a lair. Ergo, I am not a nerd. Please disregard my use of ergo.
Think about it for a second. Merton is like the ultimate fantasy for school outcasts. Not only does he get to be best friends with someone at the top of the social food chain and go on awesome adventures with a supernatural badass, he also gets to constantly save the day with his repertoire of inane trivia on spooky pop culture bullshit.
Oh, and that's me the day I met Wes Craven at the Slasher Film Festival in Muhlenberg.
Who's the big guy with his hand around your throat?
The security guard.
You should have gone to meet Robert Englund instead. He'd be cool about it. Bottom line is, these two balance each other out so well. Anytime Tommy is too book dumb for his own good, Merton is there with a dry comment to make him see some sense. And anytime Merton is acting like a helium-huffing goth Jim Carrey, Tommy is right there to drag him back to reality for at least a moment. They're also really, really super incredibly extremely gay for each other. What, you think I'm joking? Nah man, I don't care how hard these two fight for Laurie's affections or how many supernatural girlfriends they both go through. These two want each other. There's barely a scene that goes by where they aren't hugging each other, cradling each other, worrying deeply about what each other thinks, and then there's shit like this.
Okay, show me some fan. Pause. Okay, I need you to take that gown off.
Live your truth, boys. You're a match made in heaven.
So back off or we squirt.
Someone clearly noticed Danny and Brandon's chemistry too, considering they start as a comedy duo in a Canadian film called The Bail. If anyone knows where I can find this, please let me know. I kinda wanna see it. Now don't think I've forgotten that this is a Halloween episode. You didn't come here to hear me ramble about one of the greatest bromances of the late 90s. No. You came here to see some monsters. And boy howdy, does Big Wolf have monsters. Don't worry, we've got all the classics. Do you want an Exorcist-style demon? Well, here you go. Ghosts? We got them. Witches? Plenty of those to go around. Aliens? Got you covered. We'll even throw in some impreg just to make sure you unlock some fetishes in the future. We even got freaking Duke Nukem in here for the gamers in the audience. I mean, sure, the show has the budget of a middle schooler's weekly allowance, and the monsters all look like their costumes were made by scrounging the dumpster behind a Spirit Halloween in early November, but hey, this show gets wild and varied, and it's always fun to see what kind of nonsense Tommy is gonna have to square off against next. And I mean, they do get a little bit cooler looking as the show progresses. This show could actually get surprisingly creative with the monsters that our crew ended up facing. In fact, allow me to mention a couple of the more memorable ones. For an example, there's this Freddy Krueger/Cable Guy mix who starts chasing Dean for stealing cable, and he really makes an impression with his design. Then there's this robot substitute teacher who tries to implant chips in kids to make them behave, and he isn't afraid to go Swiss Army knife on them if they don't. Then there's the Spider Peep. I think I peed myself. There's the awesome voodoo priest who briefly teaches Merton all of his spooky tricks. And I have to mention this wrestler guy who will end the world if he wins 666 fights in a row.
Are you ready?
And finally, I can't talk about Big Wolf villains without mentioning Vince, Merton's childhood imaginary friend who wants his little playmate back. This guy is by far one of the most memorable villains from the show. His actor, Jeff Douglas, really channels the Beetlejuice nature of his design, with a bit of the Joker thrown in there for good measure, and he is an absolute riot to watch.
It's Vince, in the lair, with the lead pipe. And it's playtime!
Seriously, if you watch just one episode of this show, make sure it's this one. I promise Vince is worth it. It's honestly super weird how of the very few villains who made a second appearance, Vince isn't one of them. No, that honor had to go to Butch, who is just some bully from a 50s PSA video, and to the evil werewolf syndicate. These are the closest thing the show gets to recurring antagonists, and they do make for some of the more interesting episodes with their leader's goal of turning Tommy into an evil werewolf. But at the same time, they don't really have much going for them except for jokes about one of them not being all that evil, and they keep getting screwed over in each subsequent appearance. So I gotta be honest, they didn't leave that much of an impression on me. What does make an impression though is a little collection of episodes that I like to call the Corey Trilogy. Cause remember, this is a Canadian show. So of course an early season 1 episode about vampires couldn't go by without a few Lost Boys jokes, and some references to Corey Haim and Corey Feldman.
The sunglasses at night guy?
No, that was Corey Hart.
So who shows up in season 2? Why, Corey Haim of course, who turns out to have been turned into an actual vampire on the Lost Boys set, and who is now trying to turn Laurie into a vampire.
You know, next day you're up here in Pleasantville and you're shooting another vampire movie.
Vampire movie? Let me guess. A modernization of Bram Stoker's Dracula? Or a dark epic in the tradition of Nosferatu?
No, actually, this one is Sorority Vampire Beach Party.
Sounds like an instant classic.
No, it sounds like Lost Boys the Tribe. And once they nail him, ta-da! Here's Corey Feldman in season 3, who is also a real vampire and is coming to avenge his buddy. And how exactly did they turn into vampires? Screw you, it's funny, that's why. The stars really just aligned for this gag to be a thing across all 3 seasons, and I love it. Alright, you've been listening to me gush about this show for a good while now, but I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that it's some flawless late 90s TV masterpiece, because, it really isn't. I've already touched a little bit upon the low-budget goofiness of the show, which is something I personally find very charming, but it might not be for everyone. And I can't lie, the show does show its age in other ways on occasion. For one thing, the show deals with absolutely every single cartoon trope that had already become old hat by the time this show aired. Oh look, there's an episode where Tommy is randomly a complete sexist dick who claims girls can't fight. Oh look, there's an episode where Merton invents a smart potion and briefly turns into an Airheads commercial. Oh look, there's an episode about boy bands being evil. Oh look, there's a body jumping episode. I actually give that one a chance. That turned out a lot better than I thought it would be. Frankly, I'm convinced that the only reason this show doesn't have a Fantastic Voyage or Incredible Shrinking Man episode is purely due to budget restraints. And don't get me started on the outdated jokes like how easy it is to make all girls fawn over the most ridiculous shit, or the episode where the guys go to the past and accidentally turn the future into a communist Russian dystopia.
He wants to monitor all computer use. He calls it his internet policy.
Oh, fuck right off.
Don't mention the war.
Hey, remember back when copying the bullet time spin from The Matrix was literally the single funniest thing any human being could possibly do? 'Cause I don't. But quite frankly, the main strike against the show is its over-reliance on Merton by season 3. I know, I praised the guy to high heavens up until now, and I do stand by everything I've said. But clearly somebody on the crew picked up on how popular he was and decided to just run with it. Seriously, by season 3, this show kind of stops being Big Wolf on campus and just becomes the Merton J. Dingle Comedy Power Hour. And also, I guess sometimes there's a werewolf. Every other episode is suddenly about Merton trying to get into the pants of some supernatural chick, only for Tommy to drag his ass out of the fire in the last 3 minutes or so. Not that this wasn't a common trope before, but they really went overboard with it in season 3. Fantasy chicks, vampires, aliens, 900-year-old Japanese priestesses.
What's your name?
Kyuki Mitsumoto.
What a lovely name. Danish, if I'm not mistaken.
Hvor er du bare sjov, din lille lort. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still some banger episodes here and there in this season, but I came here for Merton antics and werewolf fighting, man. Why do I gotta watch Merton bounce around in a sumo fat suit or do bad superhero parodies for half an episode now? Oh, and also, the show has 2 clip show episodes, so yeah, you can just go right ahead and skip those. But seriously, even with all of these flaws, rewatching this show was just a delight. You might take a look at Big Wolf on campus at first glance and think it's some kind of awkward middle child stuck firmly between Goosebumps and Buffy the Vampire Slayer with no idea which one it really wants to be. And you're not entirely wrong. But honestly, that's what I find so charming about it. Big Wolf is less of a horror, action or drama show and more of an old school Saturday morning cartoon. One that runs on an incredibly simple formula and survives almost entirely on the base charm of its minimalistic cast of characters. It actually reminds me a lot of Scooby-Doo in that sense. I mean, yeah, sure, it's dumb, it's cheesy, it looks like it was budgeted with pocket lint and nothing ever really came of it once it was off the air. But when you do find someone who remembers Big Wolf on campus, even if you have to help them jog their memory a bit, you'll usually see them smile and go, oh yeah, Big Wolf on campus. Man, that was a fun show. And honestly, do we really need every show we ever watch to be any more than that? Big Wolf on campus may just have been a phase that those of us who were more comfortable in wacky fantasy worlds than the real one went through. It might not be the cornerstone of who we became later, or the first show we bring up if we talk about old TV. It came and it went, almost like a full moon. But that doesn't mean we didn't howl back at it with spooky delight when it was there. And with all that said, I just want to tell you all thanks for watching and happy Halloween. Have fun wearing your costumes, don't eat too much candy, and see you next time. Bye bye. Happy Halloween, everyone, and thank you so much for taking this little trip down memory lane with me. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to leave a like and maybe tell me about some other weird old shows that you remember from when you were a kid. As usual, special thanks go to Warren Miller, Thomas Jensen, The Danish Penguin, Silvermoon Ravenwolf, Pocket Mouse, John G. Robinson, John Aljetz, Half Cryptid, Andreas Wilsom, and all of my other patrons. I really appreciate it, you guys. If you want to support me too, the links to my Patreon, Ko-fi, and TeePublic pages are in the description below, along with a link to my Discord server, which you're welcome to join for news, stream announcements, and other stuff. And as always, if you're new to the channel, remember to click subscribe for more stuff like this in the future. Now go get yourself some treats and do some tricks, you crazy kids. Bye bye.